I am dyslexic. I had to be going to special classes from grade 6 on. I remember the day that my teacher in grade 5 ripped apart my math test saying, well, apparently Miss McKinnon didn't feel this was worth studying for. And of course, I had studied and studied and studied, but those numbers just didn't work for me the way they worked for others. Well then, in the 1980s in Saskatoon, I worked with a group of people who were trying to help families who had dyslexic children. And it was actually called Fat, Frustrated, Angry, and Tired. But it was a delightful program for me because I was one of a very small part. I'm not an educator, you know that. But because I had lived experience, I got to do a little thing, which I'm going to just imagine with you right now. So we were trying to help the parents understand what it was like to be the child in school who was having those moments, right? And so this was my opening exercise, if you would just imagine it with me. I would try to greet everybody by name. We would work in small groups. And then I would say, tell me about your weekend, Marion. Please don't use any word twice. So, of course, people would stumble and fall. And oftentimes they would say, oh, gee, I've used that again. And at that time, I was trained to say, I'm sorry, do you find this funny? Without any humor in my face. To let the parents know how quickly it all changed for children. Now, it was an experiential thing that helped the parents understand how for the children it was bewildering. How could I have done that wrong? Well, you used the word the 3 times already, haven't you? Did you not hear what I said? Oh, that's what it's like for our kids. Now, we found, just to let you know, those teachers are so wonderful in that program, that if they said now, for example, Leslie, you're dyslexic, and it's nerve-wracking when you think you might be asked, I will never ask you a question unless I have my hand right here. And when I come here and put my hand on the table, you'll know the next question is for you, so you listen very carefully, but don't be worried the rest of the time. Very small little tricks that made quite a difference. I bring that up because having that opportunity to have an experiential time for those parents, let them actually walk down the path their kids were already walking down in quite a short time. And it sounds kind of brutal, and some points it was. But it was an attempt to say, here's what it's like to live in that world. For about 20-some years, Canadians across country have had a similar chance through the blanket exercise to learn what we didn't know about First Nations history. We learn the history that we didn't know. And it's done with blankets, just as it's called. And it is experiential. So as different things are revealed, blankets are taken away, or people standing on a particular blanket on the floor have to move off to the side. Perhaps they've been sick, or something happened. They're moved off at smaller and smaller and smaller the blanket gets. The blanket exercise has gone virtual during COVID, but I think they're coming out now. It's done by Kairos Canada. A lot of you will have taken it. How many of you have done the blanket exercise? So really recommend it as an experiential moment to learn what we need to learn. Often it's really a wonderful way to experience. How do we renounce evil? How do we tool ourselves for equity and justice? We learn. We put ourselves, just like those parents did, in a position where it might be uncomfortable. As we learn new things, we learn what we didn't know. So I would encourage you to find out when the next one is. It may be still virtual, although I've talked to people who did it virtually and said it was just wonderful. We're very fortunate that many of us did it right here in this church in person. But it's always done at the end. There's a circle of conversation with a knowledge keeper. And that's an important part of the day about how do we make it a shorter time till justice rolls down. It's learning, isn't it? Learning together, being willing to be teachable. And so we just wanted to remind people of that beautiful exercise there. You can see it's on Turtle Island. As counterintuitive as it may seem, may the work of lament be the fuel for your empathy. Remember, you have the freedom and power to name injustice, and in that crying out, expose it to the light, because in the light it cannot survive. Let the act of grief move us rather than stymie us. I invite you to make a connection with all those images that we've talked about today. Bring their picture into your heart. And now I would ask you to join with me and bless each other and bless all those in your heart with these words. May the song you sing in your heart be pleasing to God, moving you to the passion and commitment of Jesus, uplifted by a spirit that keeps you humming life's tune of love. Amen.